Well, we're pretty lucky to have a lot of spares coming with the program that were done professionally. This is a bin of line, and let's see what we can learn from some of the spare line. This is everything you need to rig a Melges 20 here. So let's start with one of the spinnaker sheets, which is a typical example of a double braided line. That's a line that contains a central core. In this case, it's made of a material called Spectra, and it's got a cover. In this case, it's a polyester cover. And you can see where the splice shows the cover going to the core. The cover in this case is white. They put that on the end of the line so that it's easier to feed through the blocks. But they've stripped the cover from the rest of it so that the line is lighter weight. But they've also kept the cover where you need to handle the line. Even fancier because they also spliced in a pigtail so that the spinnaker sheets can be attached in a way that doesn't catch as it goes past the forestay during a jibe. Here's another look at a pigtail, and this is much better than tying a couple of bowlines to the clew of the sail. A couple of bowlines plus the clew is a lot stickier around the forestay than the splices and this pigtail. Here's a couple more spin sheets, and notice again they both have the polyester. The polyester is pretty slippery, so that allows the jibe to happen a little bit quicker. This is also a different type of Spectra. You can see it's darker. If you handled it, it's a little bit firmer. This is called heat set Spectra. It has even lower stretch than the typical Spectra. And of course there's other options for a cover. In this case they've blended in some Technora into the cover. This is actually quite grippy, so for higher wind conditions this would be a better material cover. Now here's an example of the spinnaker sheet next to the jib sheet. The slippery polyester cover is an advantage for the jibe, but for the jib sheet you want it to have a lot of grip. So that's actually a really tightly woven cover. It's actually made out of Technora in this case, which is both very durable and grippy. And here's a couple of tack lines, and they too have a very grippy finish on that cover. Also made of Technora for the chafe at the end of the pole. Now let's take a deeper dive into one of the jib sheets, which shows a lot of the whippings used to adjust the trim of the sails relative to the lead block. But you can also see here the joint between the cover and then the uncovered area. It shows that in better detail. And that goes into an eye splice at the end with a nice whipping on it. And you can see that I've labeled this with heat shrink tubing. I've really learned over the years that it's best that all lines on a boat are labeled so anyone can identify the lines, especially on a big boat. And I've been calling everything a line. A lot of people would argue that a rope and a line are the same thing on a boat. And there is some specific jargon related to wire rope, which is seen in this case. The main halyard has a splice that goes from Spectra to wire. That's 1x19 wire. You can see the eye splice they've done in the wire here. And they've done a nice job covering that with heat shrink tubing as well, so it doesn't catch and tear any of the sails, especially the spinnaker. Splicing a wire rope is actually a specialized endeavor, and in this case we can see the construction of the 1x19. We call it that because it's actually 19 different single strands of round wire wrapped around each other in a braided fashion. This is opposed to the die-form wire, which is used on the shrouds of the boat. That's similar, but the wire is actually flattened so that it's stiffer. That doesn't make it very good for splicing, and it makes it more difficult to use in a halyard situation where it's going to go over a shiv. But it's great for the shrouds because it's lower stretch. You can also see here the little piece of copper that's been swaged on. This is what catches actually in the halyard lock. And last but not least is the dock lines, which are actually 3-strand. Those are out of nylon, so they stretch, and the 3-strand construction also allows them to stretch more. Perfect for dock lines.